Welcome to you. In this video, I'm breaking down the recent Apex Hunters United podcast featuring Adrian Burgess. And honestly, this one was a fantastic listen or watch, depending on how you consume it. It was great to finally see a team manager or principal come onto the podcast and just share like some of their insights, etc. But someone that with the experience and openness and the honesty that Adrian had on this pod, he really pulled back the curtain on his time in Formula One with McLaren, the wind tunnel testing for Supercars recently, and I guess his thoughts overall on how he thinks we're really going in the Supercars Championship. So as we move through this video, I'm going to share their podcast. I'll have it on the screen. And I guess one of the first big takeaways for me was that Adrian was really positive and confident about GM and in 2026. There was just this, I guess, this air of confidence based on the way they exited 2025. I guess they can feel that they've really got the team in the right space. But here, let's have a look.
You did mention just briefly, because we did a quick chat for our members on Patreon prior to the podcast, but one of the questions we had come in from Scott was, how's the investment from GM? Obviously no specific numbers, but really, are we just grid fillers this year, or is there a long-term plan to get us back to the top? There's plenty of youth, but as new GM team, I'm assuming. If we were an AFL team, it would be called a rebuild year for GM. So I guess really, what's the future look like with GM's involvement now, and also even just from Team 18's perspective? Because like I said at the start, really leading the at the forefront really for GM going into this season and their success.
Oh, we're excited to be leading the charge, but we're certainly not GM, not just Team 18. All of us, we're not grid fillers.
And also what GM, whether or not they saw it coming with Triple Eight, but as a result, it's like the involvement and the presence from them at the racetrack now has changed completely, which is great.
They
for
were
everyone.
asleep. Yeah, they were asleep at the wheel, and I'm sure they won't, be pissed off with me saying that. They'll admit it themselves, but it's good. They're now awake and they're investing and they're here.
Yeah. They said last year what their strategy was to. They had a HT team, but they said they wanted to try and strengthen numbers between the teams, so all work together.
So you can see they're nice and confident and really basically talking to the fact that he's obviously still got passion in there. He feels like they're going to be successful, and just that awakening from the fact that bit of a rug pull from Triple Eight to step away and to step into Mustangs has really inspired them to keep going. So yeah, let's see how GM go. Obviously a big task, but we've got Toyota who's new as well. So we'll see how that goes. Now, he also did touch on, I haven't got any clips for, but he touched on how Gen 3 and how the younger drivers adapt and they're finding it easier to kind of step into the main game. He kind of hinted at the fact that there is less feel through the electronic steering, and more reliance on the data behind the scenes. In a lot of ways, it's actually closer to sim racing. And now, whether you love that or hate that, that's kind of the direction that motorsport seems to be heading. And I think he's correct in the way. I mean, if you look at the success of Kai Allen and Cooper Murray last year, and this year we've got some new fresh blood with rookies coming in, they have adapted really well and have put themselves in the box seat to win rounds or to be on the podium or even just get really great results like Cooper did in Darwin. So it was really insightful for someone of his age to kind of feel like, hey, I think that's a correlation and we can see the success coming through. Now, on the Gen 3 stuff, look, Adrian was heavily involved in the pre-work and the lead up to the change to Gen 3. So there is going to be some bias though, but I feel like in this next clip, he's kind of right in the way that he talks about like some of the wind tunnel testing, but Gen 3 has arguably been the closest racing last year after we fixed some of the Mustang stuff. But arguably there was we had different winners. We've had different teams on the podium. The qualifying results are really close. So if you have, a 10th or even, 2/10 off the time, you're at the back of the field. So, the change for Gen 3 has been overall positive, but we've still got some challenges ahead. And that kind of brings us to, in this next clip, where we're talking about like the insights from the wind tunnel testing at Windshare. It was one of my favorite parts of the pod. Really insightful, and it talks about the process, the collaboration, and how everybody kind of worked together to land the right outcome for the category. So I think for race fans who love the technical side, it was a gold piece of the podcast. Listen out in this next clip for the way Adrian explains why they changed the base car from the Camaro to the Mustang, and that kind of explains why that shift happened. But I'll play this next clip and we'll move on to it.
Yeah. So take us into a day of the wind tunnel testing there, mate. You had 3 different cars over there: the Ford, the Chev, and the Toyota. Across the 2 weeks, how does it normally run? Would you have the Chevy in there, and then you go, right, that's where that is, and you pull that off, you put the next on, and each time how long is that setup process to take one car off and put is it like 10 minutes or is it like 2-3 hours?
No, look, physically getting the car on and off, everyone's got it down pat, everyone works together, and it's a very collaborative working process. I mean, we're all in there changing the Ford, we're all in there changing the GM, and we're all in there trying to help change the Toyota just to bring down that lag time as short as you can, because you're spending lots of cash every single minute. So it's very efficient. It's only like 30 minutes swapping a car on and off. But then once you put another car on, you've got to go through the whole sort of belt calibration, the tear process. So there's probably 45 minutes of resetting your numbers for the different car. But to answer the original question, you have to be very flexible. Originally, we were going to start with the GM. And then at the end, I can't remember what was. There was a delay with some freight or something. There was some air freight stuff held up in customs, and there were some sensors that we wanted to go in the GM. We wanted to put the GM in the tunnel. When it went in, it was really, the plan was that was its only time in the tunnel. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to, because we were the incumbent and we were the datum, and we all agreed when we went there that we were going to match wherever the GM was. But we were missing some sensors, so we didn't want to put the GM not in its perfect configuration to get the parity numbers we wanted to establish. So then we dovetailed, stuck the Toyota in there because that's we needed to learn so much about that car. So we took that in there for the first 6 hours, and then the next day we went in with the GM, hoping that that'd be its only run. And then the Ford went in. But then what happened was, so we set the numbers. The GM set the numbers as the incumbent, and there wasn't really any change from the last tunnel to this time on our car. And that was all fine. The numbers repeated very closely, a little bit more front. But there's sort of a couple of reasons for that. None of them are contentious.
Yeah.
And then we put the Ford in, and the Ford had more rear than we did, but they couldn't get close to us on the front. Their car was very pitch sensitive to the front compared to the GM. They tried a lot of things. We spent like probably nearly a whole session in there trying to bring the Ford back to the GM, and we couldn't get it there. So then, like everyone, and we're all wanting the same outcome, we volunteered to make some changes to our car to move our car back to where the Ford could be.
So when you say that, did the Ford have more or less front downforce?
It had more rear total, but then in pitch, so when you brake the car and you bring the nose down, it picked up more at lower ride heights relative to what we did.
Picked up more front
with it was more pitch sensitive. So the lower you ran the front, it picked up more. And the reason for that is the positioning of the radiator duct relative to the under tray. Because the GM's got that sort of big pronounced snout, the radiator's in the same place, but the shape of the radiator duct is slightly different. And the Ford is a lot lower.
Yep.
And it's closer to the under tray. So as you brake the car, the radiator duct just above the under tray actually, didn't work as a flat floor, but it actually picked up more. Yeah. And our GM car, we've got more of a gap. Ours is higher up. So we weren't generating the same downforce in pitch that the Ford was.
Yep.
And they couldn't get rid of it. they attempted to come to us and they couldn't. So that's why we went back in and we moved our car.
Okay.
Because, we needed to leave there with everybody as close as we could. And the previous test, we weren't even measuring this. And we weren't even measuring the same effect in the rear.
Amazing.
So the test has definitely come on. It's come on a long way relative to the last one. But it's a very fluid process until you've done enough running with all of them. You've realised who can move, which we didn't take a massive amount of tools to move our car because our car was always going to be the incumbent.
Base, yeah.
So that's why, and some of that I think corrects some of the statements that have been made earlier, but that's not because they're trying to sow a particular story, they don't have the facts. But that's
what was
the
so if the Ford had more rear, would that have created either more drag or a bigger wake off the back than the Chev was?
Yeah. You won't create downforce without creating a wake.
So then if we go back to Bathurst, so I was saying, I've said since day one, I don't think it was motor.
But the problem is, not
true.
Off,
it was.
We didn't test, the Ford wasn't tested in its condition that it ran this year. There was already so many changes in the Ford before it went in the wind tunnel, so it's impossible to say. It's impossible to say the increase.
Convenient.
Why did they do that?
Because yes, you would love to.
They just
didn't
care.
Well, no,
I don't mean negatively. I meant like you just got to move forward.
It's time and money.
It's time and money, and although we had 6 days, already at the start of it, you're thinking, fuck, this is a big challenge. And you couldn't afford the time or waste the money to just go back and say, told you so, they overshot, shouldn't have done it, that change was too big. It doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, wow. So interesting. Just to hear about the Mustang and the overall aero, the more at the rear, but then when it brakes, the front aero then loads up and goes higher than the Camaro. So a lot of things to kind of contend with. Now, obviously he is biased. He's from the GM side of things. And so he's going to be talking about the fact that, it's the Ford things, but I'm sure there's things on the Camaro that are equally challenging. But it was just great insight there from Adrian, just to really explain how complicated it was and how pushed for time they were to make sure they could get as much data as possible. And to think that this stuff is now being checked and they're effectively testing and managing it. Whereas last time they were in the wind tunnel, it wasn't even considered, it wasn't looked at. So, it really is, this kind of detail is rarely explained in the supercars era. And, kudos to AHU who have been part of this kind of share and care environment where we do understand a lot more. And it does help explain to us as the fans that, that this stuff happens for a reason and it's not necessarily conspiracy theory, etc. So, it is great to hear this stuff. Now, he moves on and then they talk about how now all 3 teams will be running the same exhaust tips and exit points. So the Mustang was different. The Supra he talks about here just went with what the Camaro had, and then they've made the adjustment to, in the name of kind of parity and alignment, they've made the adjustment to the Mustang to have the exit in the same place. So let's hear this next one.
The Toyota copied the exhaust profile of the GM. So when I mean that, the exit where the tips come out the side, they're swept backwards. Where the Ford last year came out at 90 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So you can argue or you could hypothesize, guess, whatever, that the airflow is disturbed when you're on throttle. Anyway, no one fucking knows unless you're in a wind tunnel. Yeah. So the Toyota copied us, or the GM. So then it was a sensible thing for T8 to eliminate an unknown, and they changed the exhaust tips and muffler on the Ford. So now everybody's exhaust exits the same way, same position, all at the same angle. So that's a whole exhaust change. Doing that in a tunnel, mate, you're going to burn 2 hours, and that's probably 50 grand. So
all right, but
too many changes. So the original question, there were too many things different on the Ford to get any real idea of where we were last year. As much as we'd love to, I'm hearing it just wasn't practical to do that.
No, that's fair enough.
How I guess the Toyota being the new kid on the block, how much did that soak up most of the other time? Like, were the GM and Ford pretty quick to get them dialed in, and then the bulk of the remaining few days was that far out straight away, or was that pretty close when it hit?
Wasn't a million miles out because they obviously spend a lot of time in CFD doing your homework.
Because the body's
before
just
you get
wildly
there.
different, isn't it?
It's
when you
very
look
different.
at it.
It's very different. It didn't have as much drag and it had good rear, but you've got to, in the wrong term, but you've got to throw the dart at the dartboard somewhere and start somewhere. They came, and Carl and his guys, I think, did a very good job in bringing a huge suite of changes, but you've only ever got what those changes do in CFD. Sometimes it's different to real life. So, we spent a massive amount of time going through the whole suite of changes and making changes. We were designing stuff when they were there, went out and bought more plastic printers while we were there, and we're printing shit overnight, and we're printing stuff at GM to help the program. It was full on. So in that regard, it was fantastic how everyone worked so well together, and, and the cars are impounded as well. So I hope the listeners don't think that, you're messing around with your cars. You're not. Your car was sort
Everyone's
of
watching everyone.
scrutineered, sort of sealed, and it was locked in a room, and you were never in there on your own with your car and nobody else. So there's no funny business going on. Supercars were there all the time. But so I've got total trust in what we achieved there. It's just how well that can translate into real race cars. Our car was a real car. The Ford was obviously a real car, but had a lot of change, and the Toyota was, it's as much of a real car as it could have been. We were still building it when they got there, but the bodywork was very prototype bodywork, and it had to be very modular so they could change a lot, where ours was, it's race car parts. So I think we will translate to the track exactly where the tunnel was. It will be, hopefully the other two do as well.
Yeah.
So it sounds a bit, a long way around. That's always your worry.
We were actually talking about before you came here tonight, because we don't really, I did watch some of the videos, but can't go into too much depth. It's fun to actually get some insight in it, because we had no idea really how it works. But I think the one big takeaway is, when fans go in the comment section and call teams cheats or not, I think the coolest thing is that you had 3 different cars, 3 different HTs work together to create a product that we want to be as close as possible so that the fans get their show. So it's pretty crazy to see so many competitors work together with the one goal in mind. Obviously, still with their own competition in mind, but that starts like the Monday after the Friday aero testing.
100%.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, very cool to hear that, all 3 manufacturers were chipping in on each, or allowed to, more to the point, chip in and work on the other cars. So
even if you're the manufacturer that, God forbid, someone has a leg up relative to the others, it's not good for the show.
No.
Right? Even if it's your brand that's doing all the winning, you want to win fairly, and you want to win that knowing that you've beaten those guys with the same technical ability.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help anyone if it's not right when we go to the track. It should be down to the team, the driver, doing a better job and executing.
Is there a little bit of competition between everyone when you are in those rooms to make sure that you're holding each other accountable?
100%, where everyone's crawling over each other's cars and is this right? And you're grabbing Perry and Tim saying, make sure this is fucking like this when it goes racing.
Because you're working together.
Of course you are.
You're making sure you don't.
You're making sure you don't get your pants pulled down, and and someone pulls a Swifty on you. But all of us, you probably count up the years of motor racing experience that's in that room there. There's a shitload of experience, and we've all been and done it. We've all been on the right end of it, the wrong end of it. You've got to take your team hat off. You've got to go there knowing that you're representing the category and everybody's well-being, everyone's income. The fans don't want to pay and see a shit show. They want to see competition.
Yeah.
And the same with the sponsors, same with the drivers, the same with the crew, same with me, same with you want a fair fight. And that's what you're all trying to create. Gen 3.
Wow. So lots to unpack there, but how good, just to hear the stories of how they're all working together for the better of the sport. It helps reduce costs in the wind tunnel, the time in the wind tunnel, and it's all in the name of keeping supercars in the category as a whole really healthy and strong. I did sort of mention during the clip, let's call out the first year of Gen 3 where we saw the Chev had a considerable leg up and far more advantages over the Mustang, over the Ford teams. And it did kind of ruin that year for us as Ford fans. We just felt like there was no way we could either win the championship or, in the end, even win Bathurst because of some of the engine trouble. So, it was interesting, but in the same way, that insight of just knowing, they're buying 3D printers and things just to make it work and to get a good baseline is really awesome. So, I guess in this clip that's about to play, it's the first time someone at Adrian's level has really mentioned that the Gen 3 costs are coming down. There was an initial upfront, hit that kind of happened. And it's important to remember that as the years roll on, I guess those costs do reduce. There's no doubt at all that they didn't reduce the cost as much as they forecasted or wanted to from the initial phase of Gen 3 being implemented. But it is good to hear that there is some reprieve for the teams where the costs over time are reducing. And I guess this clip that I've got addresses some of the political challenges that were happening at the time. And whilst he was in that director of or technical director role at Supercars, Supercars were trying to sell the business. They were selling it to the new owners race. The budget seemed to be tight. The forecast of what they said they were going to spend was not right. Things like aero testing, etc. They did want to do them, and he talks to that in this clip, but it just wasn't possible with the budget and the resources they had when they probably should have done it from the start. But that sale of the category was really kind of impacting that a little bit. So let's get going.
Whilst I think it was a fantastic car, and it was a really good thing to be part of it, and I really enjoyed the whole process. Just the mental and physical abuse you put yourself through, because you're doing your normal job. You're still HOM, you're still running the events, you're still there in the pit lane dealing with the stewards, handing out penalties. You're still running a race event from an operational point of view, but then you're developing, doing all the Gen 3 stuff. I loved it. I think it's a great car, but then at the end of it, the politics were, it didn't roll out as good as it should have, and maybe people and us underestimated the challenge. But I think some of that we were restricted by the resource we actually had to do the job. We weren't going wind tunnel testing. Well, shit, that's not a new idea. We had sort of suggested we should go wind tunnel testing, but those resources weren't available to do that. And the same with AVLs and, I've got to be careful how far I go, but remember the business was sold around that time. And so there was a number that, this program's going to cost us this, because they're also selling the business at the same time.
Profit and loss matters at that point.
100%. You're trying to sell a circus to a new ringmaster, and, well, you guys told me it was going to cost this. People are honest. It was never going to cost that.
So some of the restrictions, I guess the politics can be different, though, because I guess you're battling with teams, but also internal. Was a lot of it from teams and drivers, or was it Supercars trying to restrict what you could do as someone that was running the Gen 3 program? What was more restricting? Was it?
Look, I think keeping focus on what the objectives were.
Yeah.
There's, as every walk of motorsport, a team's own personal agendas, motives, desires on what they want always creep in, and you sometimes forget what the show is meant to be about, what you wanted from the car. Chassis, in the old days, there's 5-6 different chassis builders. You're always saying, I need their chassis. No, you don't need their chassis. Let's make everyone's the same. We should have had one chassis builder.
Yeah.
And that's what I proposed. That's what I wanted. But again, personal interest. Well, no, I build chassis, so I don't want to buy them from them. I want to make my own. Oh, fucking hell. And then 3 years later, hats off to Baz. He smashes everyone in the first year. And then suddenly, Brody goes to DJ. I need an Erebus chassis. Well, you shouldn't need an Erebus chassis.
Yeah.
If there can be a difference between Pacers, 888s, Erebuses, Walkinshaws, if there's a difference, the rules aren't fucking good enough.
Yeah, Supercars, I slammed them. They shouldn't have been writing press releases saying how great it is that he's asking for a chassis when it's meant to be a controlled item. 100%. I said, how come there's a difference? Why are we actually writing press releases saying...
But at the very start, the intent for the business, and everybody's business, was one builder. Get your economies of scale down. You've got control of material. Yeah. You know where it's all come from. It's all the same. There's no witch on, he's tigged his when he should have migged it. All that shit still goes on.
Yeah.
Why? Unnecessary. And what does the bloke in the grandstand really care? Does he absolutely? No, he doesn't give a rat's ass. So we were forgetting the core values, what we try to establish for Gen 3, because of, there's always a bit of personal interest.
So it's clear the teams had significant input, as we have always had conjecture. We believed it was rumored or people talking about it. So the teams impacted the cost of the rollout of Gen 3, because Supercars, in my opinion, didn't take a hard stand at the time to say, no, one chassis builder, you're all getting the same thing. We're changing the business model for some of you, but it just is ridiculous. And I guess the other point really is that fans in the grandstand, they only care about these differences, these, things that raise up as issues when they don't deal with the parity stuff. Now, we're a technical parity sport. There's no getting away from it. And when things don't go well, or perhaps when supercars don't handle the discussion about it well, then that's when the fans actually, we do care. We get into the nitty gritty and we have these discussions about, well, why are they TIG instead of MIG, and why are they running this, and how do they go back in the old days? How do they get composite panels but not on the Nissan and the Ford? That's when it does raise up and the fans do care about it. But if you're doing your job well, if there was one chassis builder, we wouldn't talk about it and we wouldn't care. We probably know it at the point of launch when they announce it, but that's it. It's all done after that. So, I would say we don't care about that stuff until we recognize it as a difference or an issue. So that's just my take on that one. And I guess he talks about the final series in this next clip, and he's got some real confident. He's very opinionated, and it was fascinating to listen, because for me, this is where the disconnect is. You can't have it both ways, and this is more towards Scotty Pye than Adrian, but he does sort of touch on a little bit. The new final series was amazing. It was amazing for the fans. It was amazing for the sport. But if you start tweaking it too much, which they refer to here, you may as well just stick to the old format. If you want consistency over a whole year and reward that person, well, that's the old format. So let me know your thoughts in this clip, because it's an interesting one. It's a bit of a longer one too, so hang in there.
You cut your cloth accordingly.
You're our first team personnel since Adelaide 500 wildcard event.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on the finals format?
I loved it.
Yep.
I'm like you. And it's not taking anything away from Chazzy. Those boys had a fantastic run. Fuck, they delivered when they needed to, so they deserve it. But you're always going to be like, fuck, poor, Brock, not poor Brock, but
here we go.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Right, from my own team's perspective, we enjoyed it. Normally when you go to the Gold Coast, anyone other than 2 or 3 drivers, your year's finished. You're not going to win. You're actually just playing for 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
So we went to Gold Coast knowing we were in the 10 and fucking still excited, because you still actually thought that you could win a championship. Now, if you did everything right now.
It worked.
2 races earlier, we weren't capable or deserved to win a championship, but you went into the finals thinking, fuck, I'm still in this.
Yeah.
If my cards drop the right way, we do a good job, we can finish in the podium, we can do, it's the dream is still alive.
Well, Kai Allen, I think, was out of the 10 going into Bathurst.
2 corners to go.
I could be wrong. That's right. And snuck in and then, went through to the final 4.
Brock went past Andre, knocked Andre out.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Andre wouldn't be buying him a Christmas card.
No. So for us personally, our team was genuinely energised, knowing we'd ticked one box at the start of the year. You want your drivers in the 10. We got Anton in the 10 in a good place. We were 7th, and we were not pissed off. We were pissed off because we know we had Tassie, we had Perth, we had 2 in New Zealand where we underachieved, we underdelivered. We weren't, in that vein of good results that we all acknowledged. So we know we could have gone in maybe 5th or 6th. They would have had a couple more points, would have made getting the Sandown easier. But we fucked up. We didn't execute in the Gold Coast. We had an issue on Saturday, our own issue, not a driver issue, and then we put the drivers on. We short fueled. We were then taking compromises to get to the flag with, before the engine cut out. And so then we put the driver in a position where he was taking risk. We picked up 2 penalties. Anton had a run-in with James on the last lap where if we'd executed the day before, we maybe wouldn't have even needed to make a move. So we didn't execute. And then you look at it, so we were pissed off. And then you go to Sandown, we do our normal job, we're out of it, and we do a good enough job in Sandown to get us to Adelaide.
Yeah.
If we'd still been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So and then we got people saying we're useless, we're not good enough, you're the HT, you're not delivering. Well, fuck off. If we'd done a right job on Saturday in Gold Coast, we would have been in Adelaide in the 4. Are we fucking that useless?
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Well, to be fair, actually, we came around. Well, I did. I came around a bit towards the end of the year because I was surprised that Reynolds actually had the recovery he did. Because Anton at Townsville, I keep saying QR, but Townsville was when I did the broadcast, and I actually said, because that was where Jess nicked my question and gave it to Garth, because I wanted to talk about whether the HT relationship was helping you guys, because I had seen the change, and I thought, fuck, I wonder if it's something to do with Jeremy but I think you actually came out because Supercars interviewed you about it, and you said no, like, which was fine. That was the question I wanted to ask, though. It's like you had actually acquired new staff and you were doing different things, but the format I think is great for like Toyota coming in this year. We said last night you could actually have a car that doesn't roll out great. I almost hope for them it wouldn't be amazing, and then they get some adjustments throughout the year and end up peaking at the end of the season, because the way it works, that's why we picked DJR to make the finals. I was surprised they didn't. I thought this is perfect for Brody.
Yeah.
But I personally would just love to see it always go to the last round, and I think you could still achieve that by Gold Coast, Sandown, and Adelaide being the final. So if you made your top 10, it's like 10 drivers, points reset at Gold Coast, and you go through to the finals. And then you've still got that element where you guys had the excitement of like, fuck, we might be in. And then early in the season, you can have good race, bad race.
You've got to make sure.
Sneak in the 10.
I agree with you. Everything can take tweaks. It always can, whether it's a process that's been there 10 years, 1 year, you can always get it better. I think they did a bloody good job coming out with it in the first place, and it was very close to the mark.
Took some balls.
Next year, could
100%.
be the circumstances that happened Sunday, maybe that was this year. Next year will be completely different, and we'll say, didn't need to tweak it. It's actually good.
Yep.
It's the rub of the green. It's motor racing. But I know
100%.
for a fact we normally would have gone to Gold Coast not thinking, fuck, we're still it. It was so good.
Yeah.
The energy in the team was really great to be part of. And they've all experienced that now. My guys have got the buzz, and next year, fuck, I want both cars in the 10. And it's easy for teams to say that. It's everyone's objective. But normally you would have gone to the last race. If you were lucky, there was 2 drivers, you know.
If that,
the show's normally over
this year.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was. I almost think it was a good thing that Brock's not offense to Brock, but that it happened. I hated that it happened, but that might have been the catalyst for change. But I've seen the updated change now, and I don't really think it's much different. But we'll see. I think the best thing is, like you're saying, the teams that might be on the bubble could be coming good at the right time in the season, sneak in, so the mechanics and everyone there like all in on it, and they can still have a good Sandown and make Final 4. So we end up with 10 guys going to Sandown with a chance of making Final 4.
What we need is technical parity and
go.
fucking Trojan horse being
Remember
rolled
that.
into the pit lane.
Trojan horse.
2 races before the Enduros, and someone gets a change and they overshoot, and then we're locked into it, and then you question the validity of the finals. Right? That's the bit we can't have.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be appreciative of the winner. And I get the Brock story, man. He's fucking amazing.
But it happens, It
happens. He did a fantastic job, as they did as a team, and as GM did as a brand. You know, I think our GM, Phil, they would have loved to have gone out on a high.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they should have done. Brock did an amazing job. But this is what we all signed up for. We can't, you know, I get it. We can have opinions, but we all knew this.
Yeah, but did teams sign up for it? I've been meaning to ask that someone.
You enter, you get the rule book, you enter.
But like, do you guys get to, because that was a comment I saw a lot. Teams signed up for this. It's like, well, you sign up as in, we've got entries, but you also get fined if you don't turn up and run the entry license.
We're all consulted. We provided feedback. There were already changes, you know, from the very first draft of the point system and playoffs.
Of course,
there were changes to what we rolled out, but none of us had lived through it. None of us had imagined what was going to happen happened. And next year will be different. This year will be different again.
Yeah.
You don't know what's coming. So we've got to be careful. We're not just constantly changing shit every year based on what happened.
Yeah, that's
last
a good
event.
point. Yeah, like reacting to something that just happened. That's a good point.
Yeah, well, lots to unpack there. But look, I think there is some validity to what Scott was saying about having the grand final over multiple races. That could be something that does work for the category, but we still got to thread this needle of not just rewarding the most consistent driver across the whole year. That was the old system. The Sprint Cup still rewards consistency, right? So maybe they can boost that so that we don't take away from it, you know, with more incentive, more monetary kind of, I don't know, prestige or whatever it is. I think, but overall, I believe the final system that they ran in 2025 worked exactly as they intended it to, and we just don't need to tweak it too much. I think we still need another 2 years of kind of data to really understand where we can make it better, in my opinion. Now, I guess in this final clip, as we wrap up a little bit, the Trojan horse comment that I said to remember, like, this was very interesting. And it was where Adrian was making a comment about how the Mustang changes were implemented and how he thought like that they made the changes to address the wrong issue. And I actually agree with him in this instance. It was the motor that was not parity, and he agrees and declares that it was, but then they decided to adjust the aero. And so, look, listen to his strong comments here, and yeah, let me know what you think.
Early on, we've got to make sure we don't value those events and that first half of the year. You still got to get to the playoffs, and you've got to get there in the best shape.
Yeah,
you know, with the most amount of points that you can go in there with.
Did the changes on the Ford at the Bend surprise you guys? Because I flew in with Charlie the day before. I sat beside him, literally got on the plane and sat down beside Charlie. And I said to him, I read Speed Cafe getting on, saying they're changing this. And he was like, oh, I don't think it's going to happen. But then because I didn't see it coming either. And then when I landed, they said, no, it's happening. Was that?
I'm going to be so careful.
You literally can't, yeah.
I'm going to be so careful.
So caution the wind, mate. Tell us what you think.
Look, I'll be the one to say that I disagreed with it. And then we went to
know what I feel about it.
Right.
And I don't think if you can show there's a problem, no team in the pit lane will not want to fix it. But if you identify the problem, you've got to affect the right rectification.
Yep.
Not the wrong one. Ask me if I agree with the change. No, I don't.
Yeah.
Do I agree there should have been a change? Yes. But I don't believe we fixed it with the right change.
Yep.
And that's what I referred to earlier about the Trojan horse.
Yeah.
We've got to look forwards. Hopefully.
You are good at that.
You blokes don't fucking make a nice, or someone make a stupid fucking story out of that one. But I don't.
Oh, no.
I didn't like
Promise.
it. Yeah, I didn't agree with it. I agree there should have been. There was enough evidence to say that there was an end of straight problem. But I don't think the fix was the fix that should have happened for the end of straight problem.
So there you go. He even confirms it there. And look, all I can say is I love that honesty. It was an outstanding episode from Apex Hunters United. Massive credit to them and to Adrian Burgess for being so open and honest during that. If you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. Definitely, whether you're on podcast with Spotify or you want to watch it like I did on YouTube, go check it out. It is worth a listen in full. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like and subscribe and share it with others. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.